gotta bring it to.
Point three, as you know, is the countdown to election.
Yep.
And we've got some special guests in the studio. And I just want to say good morning to the leader of the Party for Progress, Miss Melissa Gumbs. Good
Good morning,
morning.
Elektra. How are you?
Also, I want to say good morning to Mr. Nicholls. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Elektra. How are you keeping?
All right, we'll start up with the leader of the party, of course, because it is always good to get that leadership feel in any party. So, Melissa, I just want to give you the opportunity to maybe reintroduce yourself for those listeners or viewers that don't know who you are as
Okay.
yet, and then we get into the meat of the things.
Sure. Melissa Gumbs, party leader, number one candidate of the Party for Progress. I
Go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
born no worries. Born and raised on St. Martin. Did my studies here at St. Dominic High School and Primary School. Then I went to Miami, got a master's in international business and communications. Came back home for a while, worked at Sonesta Maho Beach. Shout out to my hospitality people. And then after that, I moved to the Netherlands where I actually switched careers, worked for a trust company. So got the big view into international finance and how that works, which I've used actually to kind of shape how I present myself in Parliament. While in Holland, decided to enter the political arena once I moved back, and I said, it's time to start a new party, a fresh party, one that's focused on integrity, on accountability, one that's built with young professionals who all share that vision. Because I think a lot of the times we focus on the young and the new, but new for new's sake does not always work out. So I wanted it to be persons that really aligned with the principles and values of the party, and how we all believe St. Martin should move forward. And yeah, came back home, worked at UTS. um, as customer service manager, where I really got some more insights into how our private sector works on St. Martin, working with different businesses, and also the requirement for us to really improve our digital infrastructure. It is a need now. It's basically a critical need. So yeah, that
So
led to the Party for Progress. And
okay.
2019, we launched the party, and boom, bam, had to be in our first election in less than 3-4 months. And 2 seats later, here we are.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, also joining us is a candidate number five, Mr. Luciano Nicholls.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the opportunity also to introduce yourself to our Oasis listeners.
Sure. My name is Luciano Nicholls, born right here on St. Martin. I went to school here, from primary all the way up through high school, Milton Peters College, finished the Harvard, went away to the United States of America. I finished my studies in physics, and I hold a bachelor's degree in physics. I came back home to St. Martin, and I currently work one in waste management, which has been in the family for over 50 years. And I also work as a teacher at the Milton Peters College for their CXC department. I'm their physics teacher.
All right, thank you so much. Well, there we have both introductions from the leader and candidate number five. So we're going to get into the meat of things. We're going to be swinging the microphone back and
All
forth
right.
so the microphone can go back to Melissa. And then we start off with the basics. So getting into, of course, politics and, first snap elections, you get
Yep.
elected, and there you are, sitting at parliament, and you're like, wow, this happened so quick.
Yeah.
Did you expect that you would be elected in your first go?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact, he laughed because he knows that before I kept telling them, guys, Let's manage our expectations. We're a new party. This is we literally launched
Hmm.
in September 2019 and had to contest the January 2020 election. So if we get close to a seat, we'll be good. We should be
Right.
happy,
Right.
and then focus on building the party, developing candidates for what should have been the 2022 election, but then 2020 pushed that forward. So actually, we were like, okay, by 2024,
Yeah.
we should be able to at least get 2 seats,
All right.
and
Good.
now here we are.
There you are. Well, while in, of course, parliamentary seat, you and Mr. Peterson held 2 seats there. What could you tell the community of your accomplishments? What do you think you have done as Party for Progress?
I believe we raised the bar of how representation is provided in Parliament. One thing that we realized early on is that we would be fact checking the things that our colleagues were saying, and I think that this speaks to a larger issue on St. Martin, an endemic issue, I would even say, where there's a general lack of knowledge or awareness of not just local politics, but regional and international. So the way that the world works, I use the phrase world readiness in Parliament once to say that, we have to start preparing people for the reality of what exists outside these 16 square miles. Because even when it comes to certain things regarding our neighbors to the north, many people have no idea why certain things are the way they are.
Mhm.
I've had colleagues mention on the floor of Parliament, well, um, we need to have a healthcare system like the French side, and I'm like, okay, but the French side has a different constitutional relationship with the state of France. They are the state of France,
Mhm.
so their healthcare is backed by 49 million tax-paying citizens in France. And that's why it's able to be as universal as it is. And when you say these things, when you don't say the truth on the floor of Parliament, people take that on and they run with it. Because citizens have said to me that we could just be like a friend said when it comes to healthcare. No,
No,
we can't.
no.
Insurance is about numbers. So then I get into the nitty gritty of explaining that to them, and they walk away, more knowledgeable. But
Mhm.
that's a one-to-one basis, and I think for us, we've pushed, educating the population about how it works in Parliament, how Parliament is supposed to interact with government, and the fact that our main task as Parliament is to supervise and to hold government accountable,
Mhm.
and to make sure that they're executing their task according to the law and according to the best interest of the citizens.
Well, Mr. Nichols,
Mhm.
you also postulated yourself back in the first
That's correct.
elections back in 2019, I
Yes.
believe it was.
Yes.
And of course, now you're here for the second round. What do you think you could offer the citizens of St. Martin as a physicist, teacher, and of course, being in the waste management industry for quite some time?
Well, once again, the last time I ran, education was at the forefront of my platform. It
Okay.
is no different now. Again, we don't have to look too far and see the problems that we have in education. And then we also know that in the last 4 years, nothing has been done for education.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still standing uh, on that foundation. Because
Yes.
we believe that education is the foundation to build a nation, right? I'm still looking at STEAM education, something that I believe in wholeheartedly, because we in PFP also believe that if we want to diversify our economy, we need to start looking at innovative ways of doing that.
Yeah.
And one of those areas is technology. And so we need to start preparing our students for roles that we need to fill in society when that time comes. Another area, as you mentioned, is waste management. It's something as a Harlow, we've been in waste management for over 50 years. And I can tell you this: nothing has changed from the time when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed from the time that my grandfather was picking up garbage. It has been the same old routine. I give this analogy when you're dealing with things like plastics. If you bought a Welch's grape juice back in the 80s at Food Center, that's still on the dump here today.
Yeah.
Everything that we've ever produced is still here today. These things are not biodegradable; they stay there. And I say this publicly as well. Government has to move in a certain direction right now. That's because of the World Bank and
Yeah.
NRPB, and they're forced to do something with it. What we decided in PFP is that we're going to see this through. Okay, when we're talking about things like recycling, there are schools that are doing recycling right now here on St. Martin. They're sorting their garbage and they're transporting the garbage over to the front side because there is no law that stops us from transporting recyclables over to the front side. We don't believe in recreating the wheel here in PFP.
Yeah.
If we always talk about unity. We
Yeah.
always talk about working with the front side, this and that. You have a unity flag, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes down to it, you don't see that practicality. We don't exercise it. And so what we're talking about here in PFP is exercising that with we'll sit down, we'll talk with them and see how can we work together to be able to solve a problem that we both have.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Melissa, I mean, you've been in Parliament for 4 years. You've gone through lots of different scenarios where sometimes ministers, the government that operates the day to day operations, are called to answer certain questions because whether it is you saw something in a
Yeah.
newspaper or the community is crying out on social media.
Yeah.
How has that relationship been with government coming up and being accountable to parliamentarians when asking questions? Do you think that it was sufficient in the last 4 years?
I think it started off okay in 2020, and somewhere around the time of us bringing a motion of disapproval against the Minister of Rami, it kind of went sour.
Okay.
I think that we were very much regarded as the friendly faction in Parliament, only because we were willing to work together to try to find solutions to pull the country out of COVID. We
Yes.
supported the budget
Correct.
twice,
Hmm.
which I can tell you there are MPs in there that had they been in opposition, they would have voted no just for voting no sake.
But did your party not present a motion where you could get a cut back on your salaries as
Well,
well?
yes, actually, in 2020, that would be April, I believe. We presented a motion to cut our salaries 15%. Oh, sorry.
No problem. But
We presented a motion to cut our salaries 15%, and they actually voted that down.
mhm.
We basically tried to say, well, guys, we have to stand in solidarity with private sector. This is going to be a very terrible um, time, economically speaking.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
even though 15% is, it's not a
Because at
huge
first
chunk.
it was 25. We were
Well,
trying to
yeah, at
lobby for
first we
25.
were talking about 25, and then they were like, so we were like, okay, so 15 is doable. And they shot it down. They shot it down. And in fact, one of the MPs at the time, who's now a minister, said that I use my salary to help people, so you could wheel and come again with that. And it's on tape. It's on
Mm.
tape. So I think that that showed us that, okay, well, from a, I guess, emotional attachment to the people, we're not going to get it from this government. So let's just try to see how else we can work with them to find a way out of COVID. And the cutting of the salaries wasn't. I think a lot of people said, "Oh, this is a political stunt, etc." We were proposing a permanent cut, not a temporary one.
But if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the politician.
Yeah.
Is our parliament not the highest paid parliament
Yes.
in the whole
In the
kingdom?
kingdom, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Okay.
we are. We are the highest paid parliament in the kingdom, and in addition to that, and I want to make it clear, not only are we the highest paid parliament in the kingdom, but we're also allowed to have side businesses.
Yes.
I don't have one.
As parliamentarians,
Before
yes.
being elected, I had a consultancy, and I shut it down the day I was elected
Okay.
because the intention of the salary being so high was for it to be a full time job. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, from the days of the Netherlands Antilles, early in the 80s, I think you were getting a stipend
Hmm.
to be in parliament. I think it was like 900 guilders or something like that.
Okay.
And then around the time that Aruba departed the Netherlands Antilles, the decision was made to give them a salary and make it a full time job. So it's been a full time job. Back then, I think it was 3 to 4 thousand guilders that they were bringing home as members of parliament in the Netherlands Antilles. And when we changed to 10, it became what it is today. Again, still as a full time job.
Okay.
So, but we are still allowed to have side businesses. And because the code of conduct that I was working on when I was chairwoman of the ad hoc committee for integrity in parliament was not passed, um, you still don't have to declare those side activities to parliament and thus to the public.
Okay, well, I mean, a lot of things have been going on in recent years. We had a detrimental, catastrophic hurricane, Irma, then Maria right after, and then COVID came along. Do you think that, getting that stimulus from the Netherlands, of course, aided many businesses here in the community, or and the World Bank coming on? What are your views on that? Since we were in such a devastating situation. Do
Yeah.
you think that was a good move a wrong move?
I think actually when they stated that the World Bank would be managing the trust fund, I did say to my dad at the time, I said, this is going to be a disaster.
Okay.
Mainly because, again, back to that world readiness that I spoke of.
Mm-hmm.
We are accustomed to a tender being maybe 10 pages.
Yeah.
A tender document from government, a terms of reference is maybe 10 pages.
Yeah.
A World Bank terms of reference, if it's 30 pages, it's short.
Yeah.
And I think that we're not accustomed to that level of working, that high technical level of operating, and that goes back to world readiness and being ready for these different ways of doing business and working within the world. So I knew it would be a bureaucratic process. Sorry. I knew it would take a long time, and I said it. I told my dad, I told them, I
Yep.
said,
Yep.
guys,
Yep. Yep.
this World Bank business is going to be funny business because it's going to take a while for us to get accustomed to those procedures and processes.
I mean, yes, Mr. Nichols, we've been hearing
Yeah.
a lot of uh, um, talk about the World Bank with the processes and the funding with NRPD and projects uh, being done. And as you just stated, takes like 30 pages if you have to tender for a project. Do you think that this enhances our country, or does this put us in a more stagnated place to be better in the long run?
You know, we've had we've had years of the same.
Okay.
Okay. And we've kept on doing the same thing over and over. And maybe, and not maybe, I believe that this is the push that we definitely needed to be able to change that. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
if we're dealing, if you can't do this on your own, then somebody has to force you to do it. And so it can only help to uplift the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why we have been shouting from the rooftops about that LB to
Yeah.
be able to fix our tendering process that we have right now. Because government tenders on a whim.
Yeah.
Okay, who wins the contract is also on a whim. Whoever up there that wants a certain company to win a contract, that's done like this, and so we have to have those laws in place
Yeah.
to be able to
So,
govern
so
this,
wait, wait,
take
wait,
that out
wait,
of the
wait, wait,
hands of
wait,
the
wait, wait,
yes,
wait.
yes, yes.
So are you saying that there's no proper criteria to select the
Correct.
people
Oh,
that are in a
Correct.
bidding process?
cri-
Yeah.
the criteria is mm, iffy. It's here, neither here nor there.
Okay.
There is criteria. Whether they stick to that criteria is a different
Yeah, and
story.
just if
Yes,
I can just
come
put
in.
in, so what Lucho is speaking about is the national decree containing
Hmm.
general measures
Okay.
that will regulate tendering, and this is something that MP Peterson has spoken about on the floor of Parliament excessively since 2020. It is required by law. The
Mm-hmm.
accountability ordinance requires that government put a process in place for tendering because you are spending the people's money,
Yes.
and this national decree would regulate tendering for the entirety of government
Correct.
because it's not just VROMI that tenders, it's not just TEAB that tenders. Every ministry, in fact, can issue a tender.
Yeah.
You understand? So I think that the fact that we don't have a clear process of what it's supposed to look like for the entirety of government, that means that you have had ministers and their staff deciding what a tender would look like today, and then in 3 years it could change based on the minister, and it just like Lucha said, it goes on a whim.
Hmm.
Whereas if you just put that process in place, and again, it is required by law.
Hmm.
Article 46
Correct.
of the Accountability Ordinance says you have to regulate this further by LBHUM, by national decree.
They should have
Okay.
happened in 10-10-10.
Yes,
Okay.
actually.
Let's go back to 10-10-10 now that you brought it up. We're a country 13 years old, autonomous within the kingdom. What are your views of that process? Did it go smoothly? Could it have been done better? Did the Netherlands, the kingdom, let us go like, okay, children, you want to go and play and be independent and
Yeah.
do your thing? Just do your thing. Do you think that process went well? And is it because it went so quickly that we're now in these types of problems
Yeah.
because we never had a parliament? We have to start from scratch. Tell me your opinions on that.
I always hear that, well, we didn't have these institutions, we didn't have a parliament, but we had people who had been in parliament
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
of the Netherlands Antilles. So
Correct.
it's
Correct.
not like we didn't have the example. And I think that learning from example is something that we struggle with here.
Okay.
I think that it was indeed a rush process. We've all had this discussion where,
Yes.
it felt like there was more of a focus on, well, how do we carve up the country? for ourselves and our bodies, as opposed to how do we truly set the foundation to build a country on. And I think it was rushed, number one. Number two, there were many things that were not done to make sure that we started on a good footing. You have MPs that talk a lot about debt cancellation and how we never got it when we transitioned from the Netherlands Antilles to a country. But a lot of people forget that, you had the debt of the Netherlands Antilles
Hmm.
that was wiped. And then Curacao asked for the debt of territory Curacao to be wiped, island territory Curacao. And the Dutch were like, okay, cool, but then put up the CFT. You'd have to take that if we're going to wipe this debt. We also had the same offer. All we had to provide were, I would say, the receipts, as the young people say, on what we spent this, how did we rack up this debt? Were those receipts provided? Did we have receipts? Did we have invoices? I don't know. If you
Okay.
look at the cases that have involved politicians over the years, a lot of times the invoice has not been there.
Oh,
It's been, or the invoice is very suspicious. There's no line breakdown. There's no whatever. So these are the little things, the minutia of it, that now 30 years, however many years later,
hmm,
we're feeling the impact of what that was, of how not having the proper processes and procedures in place, not having the proper accountability and checks
correct.
and balances in place has brought us to where we are today.
All right, Mr. Nichols,
Yes,
we're moving on now to, of course, 2024. We're in
correct.
the age of technology. We're in the age of innovation. We are in the age of moving forward. So, as a candidate vying for the parliamentary seat, what can people expect of you? And of course, PFP. What could they expect should you be elected?
Well, you can expect us to continue doing what we're doing. You can expect us to continue holding government accountable. And I'm going to say this here, not because, and this time we gone in for government. Okay,
Okay,
we
so
are
you
gone in for
you
government.
you you want
We're
to
not
be
sitting back this time.
ministers
Uh,
and okay, got
we saw what happened when we sat back, and so it's time for us to govern.
it. Okay.
But I will also say, remember, we stated that that Parliament's um, most important role is to keep government accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And in PFP, we do not believe that there is a difference between our coalition and opposition when it comes to keeping government accountable.
Yeah.
So even if
Understood.
it is our ministers inside there, we're going to keep them accountable.
Yep.
So
Understood.
it's going to be the same thing that you have gotten from us for these past 4 years, plus more, because we plan to add a few more members to Parliament.
Okay. So Melissa, I saw how you say an article in the paper where it stated that PFP is gonna hold. If you're forming government, you
Yeah.
want people that are integral. You want
Mhm.
Yes.
people that can be held accountable and all that stuff. How do you plan to achieve this? I understand what Mr. Nichols is saying. Once the people have been elected, then you get a chance to work. But sometimes they say once you get inside, you don't know what you're gonna meet. So
Yeah.
how are you gonna tackle? How are you gonna meet? It's like
Yeah.
you left the house and now it
Got a
comes and
covered,
it's a
right?
mess, or
Yeah. No, I think.
or it's really neat. It's
Yeah.
too neat. How are you gonna deal with that aspect
Too
of it?
neat is a well.
um,
Yeah.
No, no,
That's
no.
yeah.
don't
Things
think
can
that will be
happen.
Yeah.
It's too neat.
No, but I think for us it has always been about communication. It has been about letting people know what we are about. I think all of our colleagues, including the new parties that are not sitting in parliament right now, are well aware of how we approach parliament, how we approach governance, what we think about accountability, and the things that we're willing to do to make sure that integrity is upheld at all times.
Right.
Even internally we have done this already, and you have a lot of well, as one of your own, no, if one of our own is doing something incorrect or is not moving in the direction that the band is moving in, then that person has to be removed, that person has to be held accountable, and the steps have to be taken to do whatever needs to be done, whether it's you give them a tick on the fingers like we did with the motion of disapproval, or you tell them, thanks for trying but you need to go home. That has to be a level of maturity that we all have. Persons act as though, a minister being held accountable by being made to step down is the end of the world. But only on St. Martin is it the end of the
Correct.
world. You just had a cabinet reshuffle in Barbados.
Hmm. But the Prime Minister herself did it.
Yes, I
It's
And
understand.
possible, so it's you have to, and I think that takes a level of political maturity that maybe others are not yet at. But we are at that point, and I think everyone knows it's. I've made it abundantly clear. We've all made it clear that this is what we expect. We even put it in the manifesto where you have the deal breakers, where we essentially say, this is what we want and we believe needs to happen within the first 3 to 6 months of being in government.
Correct.
That national decree that Lucho spoke about, a pause on large scale commercial development so that we can get a handle on our environment and where it's going. Because you have one hand, out of one side of the mouth, it's we're focused on sustainable development goals, including climate change and environmental protection. Out the other side of the mouth, it's yeah, but we got to keep building because
Hmm.
development, because progress.
Hmm.
Pouring concrete is not progress. I think we can see after decades of pouring concrete that we've left people behind. And so that to me is not progress. Progress is the people who live, eat, breathe, sleep, and swim in St. Martin every day. Those people have to be moving forward. And I don't think we see that.
Talking about progress,
Yeah.
Mr. Nichols, let's talk about the orange economy and the development of that. You have people here that are artists, you have people here that are singers, you have people here that are creatives. Do you think that plays a very important role with now St. Martin, moving to the new centuries ahead?
Oh, definitely. I come from the church background, so I
Okay,
grew up singing.
okay.
My uncle used to be. I drum
And
as well.
play.
I play marching drums. I've been doing that since I was 11 years old,
Wow.
and so I've always been enthralled with the arts. I
Mm-hmm.
studied science, but it's something that's near and dear to me, and I don't think we put the emphasis on our artists as we should. You go all throughout the Caribbean, you go all throughout the world, and those are some of the island's heroes. Whereas in St. Martin, that is not the case, and that's why again, within that acronym called STEAM, it's science, technology, arts, and mathematics, because we know that everybody cannot be a scientist. Somebody has to take up that mantle. Somebody has to be able to paint the murals of St. Martin, paint that history of St. Martin,
Yeah.
sing those songs of this country. Create those plays. We had a wonderful play that was put on a few weeks ago. We need more of these people here in St. Martin, and Party for Progress is committed to fostering that environment for them.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa. I'm putting you on the spot. This is the opportunity for you to speak out to the community of St. Martin. Should your Party for Progress get the full mandate, from the people?
She said full
Would you
mandate.
full mandate? I'm just saying something. Would you be willing to be the leader or the prime minister? Should that fall in your lap?
Should it fall in my lap? Yes. It is not the be all end all. But should it fall in my lap? Yes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've it's daunting to consider because again, we wanted to grow small, but I think people's appetite for change has increased even tenfold in the last 4 years. So if it were to fall into my lap, of course, of course that is something that I would be ready to take on and truly, move the country forward, move the needle forward then for Simatin. But it is not the end, the be all end all. I would not cry if it didn't fall into my lap.
Understood. Understood. I want to go back to something that you touched on with regards to calling ministers to Parliament and being a parliamentarian, as it were. Sometimes you hear things like, "Oh, we have to vote party lines.
Yeah.
We have to vote party lines." But you are a member within a parliament. But is it okay to vote your conscience, even though, say, for instance, you don't agree with your party? Is it okay for you to do
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Do you think that is done enough without making government fall? Do they understand the concept of that?
I'm not sure that they do. We saw it happen a couple times actually, since 2020. So for example, you had the motion of disapproval. MP Duncan supported that motion, even though she was still with the National Alliance at the time. Internally, I think it maybe caused more than a few ripples. And then you saw that eventually, a few months later, she stepped out and said she went independent. And I think that is because of the pressure of no, you have to vote to protect your own, even if your own are doing incorrectly. which is unfortunate because you are supposed to be able to have those conversations and say, MP Peterson and I do it all the time. We have voted counter to each other on several occasions. A recent example is the 2021 financial accounts of government of the country. The minister brought it forward.
Mm-hmm.
We had a discussion. MP Peterson said, the General Audit Chamber had some comments on it, that it's still not being done according to, how it should be done. There were still some gaps in certain numbers in certain areas. And when it came down to the vote, I looked around and I said, okay, this is a, where it's only 10 of us in here.
Mhm.
Had I voted along with opposition, or had I voted like my faction member stated he was going to vote for simply legal principles, it would have failed. And then it would have had to go all the way back into the legislative process, spending time from SOAB, spending time from civil servants in the finance ministry to bring the law through the legislative process again, and then bring it to parliament again. So at the last minute, I said, when I looked around and I said, okay, no, we can't let this happen, because, getting our financing, our accounting up to date is one step towards regulating the money of government. I voted yes. I voted for it. So it deadlocked the vote. And when it's deadlocked, it comes back to parliament for another vote. It doesn't go all the way back
To the
into
whole
the
process.
legislative process.
Mhm.
And my coalition colleagues, like the colleagues from coalition, were astounded. They were like, my gosh, how did you think to do that? And I'm like, well, sometimes it's okay to vote counter to your faction if it means that it is something
Definitely.
decent for the country. And
Okay.
that, I think, is where everybody has to examine their own conscience. It's literally, you vote your conscience. MP Peterson said, for legal purposes, I cannot vote for it because this is the remarks from General Audit Chamber, which is a High Council of State, etc. I said, I understand, but I am comfortable with moving ahead with it as it is, and they continue to work on the issues that General Audit Chamber mentioned. So I'm comfortable voting yes, and that's how we end up there.
So, Mr. Nichols, over the years we've seen coalitions come, coalitions go, government fall. All kinds of things have been going on through years. No sustainability in government.
Mhm.
Now, for the past 4 years, it's the first time in history that St. Martin has seen a sustainable government. Of course, not without any hiccups.
Correct, correct,
Irma
correct,
and COVID. It was very trying times for the country of St. Martin, but yet the country stayed together. They
correct.
Hmm.
bonded
Mhm.
together
Mhm.
and have brought it to a full term. Do you see that as maturity, or do you see that of just holding the government together to hold the government together?
Well, let me preface this by saying that the country was held together with two plasters.
Okay.
Plaster number one, her name is Melissa Gumbs, MP Melissa Gumbs, and plaster number two is MP Region Peterson. We are the ones that kept this country together.
Now,
Yeah.
now you have to give more
Okay,
explanation because
okay,
people
okay.
maybe don't understand the plaster number
No,
one.
no. Listen. So it is not as if we weren't approached to be in coalition after everything was said and done.
Okay.
Okay. But we told them absolutely not. Um, Sit down there and work together to get this done. If we were the same opposition as all the oppositions all the coalitions or all the other parliamentarians that you spoke of just now, then we would have had a snap election already.
Yeah.
That is the political maturity that we're talking about, and that political maturity was nurtured and fostered within the PFP.
Yeah.
We are the ones that kept this country together, so they can tell you. So we'll tell them, you're welcome
Yeah.
for that job well done.
Okay. And what was the plaster number two?
That's
You
what
said
that. I mean,
Peterson.
that's
oh,
Two
both of
of
them.
us,
together,
yeah.
They're
together.
together as
Okay,
one.
two and one. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Well, Melissa, time always runs out. There's
Yeah.
so much topics, or so many, sorry, topics. My English teacher would be upset. So many topics that we can cover here on Groovin right here with me. But what heartfelt message would you want to share here this morning that would convince people that Party for Progress is the party that, could lead this country into a new or a different direction.
But Electra, people just have to look at our conduct, our approach to parliament, our approach to governance, our commitment to integrity, and to holding not just the government and our colleagues, but each other accountable. It's our a commitment to communicating very openly and transparently and honestly with the public. When something has happened, we have literally stated it. You saw last week there was a rumor going around that we were vote buying. We
Hmm.
posted on Facebook and said if anybody from PFP approaches you about that, report them. Report them to the authorities and report them to the party because we take those allegations seriously. Whether they're rumors created by persons who have nothing else to do in their life, that's one thing about it. But I'd rather prove that it is that. I don't want that. We don't want that aura drifting around the party or anything like that. I think that our commitment to, even the so in the party we do a fight for the future. So every candidate has 5 points that also feed in to the larger manifesto that they want to push and champion. I've stuck to mine. Mine have changed a little bit, but I continue. I focus on women's health, including reproductive health, especially reproductive health, so that we're in line with the United Nations SDGs, because that's also an SDG. I think it's SDG number 5. Promoting
Sustainable goals.
child and adult literacy programs. I think
Hmm.
no faction has grilled the Minister of Education more on the plans for education, both in the schools and outside of the school. Our literacy rate is falling, and being able to read and write, it's literally a gateway to opportunities. And the fact that we have so many people here struggling with that still, it's atrocious to me. Economic development, we have pushed for true diversification. So not just diversified tourism, because we can't even find our niche in tourism. We can't even decide what type of tourism product we want to be. But diversifying through STEAM education. STEAM education opens up a portal to exporting from right here on St. Martin tech skills, whether it's programming, coding, game design, all types of tech related jobs that you don't have to leave St. Martin to be able to do. It's my goal one day that we have a game development studio on St. Martin, and I believe it's going to happen. We push for a shift towards responsible foreign investment that makes sure that it uplifts everybody in the country and that it's not just cutting into the hillside to make debris run into the lagoon, and then we got to pay to dredge the lagoon every minute because somebody wanted to build something that no one is even going to live in, that's just going to be on Airbnb, rented out here and there. What do we get from that in the long run? We get a building permit fee.
Hmm.
There's a boon in construction for maybe 6 7 months while it's being built, and then what happens? You understand? And finally, just yeah, like I mentioned, improving our digital infrastructure, a commitment to improving the lives of those that live here, because that is, I think, what we forget when I listen to a lot of the other party platforms. It's a focus on the visitors, the visitors, the visitors. Visitors don't live here. We live here. We have to breathe this air 24/7, 365, 366 in a leap year, which this
Hmm.
is.
Yes.
We have to swim in these waters every day. We have to drive on these roads every day. We have to use these services every day, the internet, the electricity, etc. We're the ones that have to do that, not the visitors. And there's no disrespect to tourism because it is our bread and butter. But we can now add some cheese and salami, I think, and maybe diversify truly from that product.
So you want to make a club sandwich? Mr. Nichols,
Yes.
last words.
Sure. This is we have reached the final day of interviews. We have this is the
This is
final
it.
countdown. The curtain is about to fall on this election, and the lady is about to sing. But we all know the problems here in St. Martin, and we all know that we are in a dark place right now. Things are looking grim.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about hope. I had a friend that spoke to me this week, and she said, Lucho, y'all have given me hope. So there is something to be said about hope. History tells the story of David versus Goliath. We're only 10 men, 10 men and women. It's only 10 of us. History has told the stories of the few overcoming the many. And I believe that this story of PFP is the same. Okay? I believe that we have what it takes to really make a difference here on St. Martin. So tomorrow, that's January 11th. I want you to consider the PFP 10. You remember that story of Leonidas and his 300 against the Persian horde? I want you to consider
Yeah.
the PFP 10 because here are your noble Spartans. We are ready to do battle. We are ready to bring St. Martin somewhere where we have never seen before. All we ask is that you give us that mandate. Vote the gold standard.
All right, there you have it. I want to thank you very much for coming in. Good luck, Melissa, and of
Thank
course,
you.
the rest of your 9 candidates tomorrow at the parliamentary elections. Tomorrow is election day, so I wish every candidate the best of luck. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
Thank
for
you.
Thank you.
coming in.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Elektra.